Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. I've got a wonderful group of people here with me today to talk about recovery. September is Recovery Month, so we really want to zero in on what is recovery, what does it mean for different people, and how can you help initiate somebody's path to recovery, or how can you be a part of somebody's recovery and help keep them on the path to recovery. So we're going to talk about some different things in recovery today. And really, we're just having a conversation here. So I will introduce you briefly to our crowd, and then we'll kick off the conversation. I'll go across my screen. First, we have John, and we have Wendy, we have Brian, Scott, and Teresa. I can say more about you folks and your backgrounds and where you come from, but I think we'll probably let that unfold in the conversation. So we have more time to get to the juicy part, and it's not just a video of introductions. We want to get more in depth here. And I am Rachel Loria with the New York Council on Problem Gambling. So the first thing that I want to ask all of you guys in the group to do is define what recovery means for you. I mean, we're talking specifically here about problem gambling recovery, but I know for some of you, working in the field, you don't just work with people with problem gambling. So feel free to talk about recovery in general and what that means. And somebody can just jump in. I didn't assign an order.
I'll go real quick. I'm Brian. I have a compulsive gambler, and I last placed a bet in July of 2014. And for me, recovery is just a very simple act of not gambling and trying to be a better person and being okay with that whole process. We just literally talked about this on the podcast, which was abstinence versus recovery. And for me, abstinence is a big part of my recovery. Not gambling helps me day by day by not increasing the harm. Eventually I get to the point where like, oh, but I want to gamble because, I'm angry all the time. Why am I angry all the time? And then I explore that in recovery. And so as long as I'm okay with that process, that's all recovery is to me, is the act of not gambling and trying to be a better person and in turn helping others. So that's as simple as it is for me.
Yeah, so I'm John. Last time I placed a bet was April 18, 2011. And recovery for me is just a different way of life, basically, a different way of living. Because when I was in action, I was not living. I was dying a slow death all day, every day. So for me, it's kind of, and I completely agree with Brian. In the beginning, it was, and I don't know that Brian meant this, but in the beginning for me, it was all about abstinence. I didn't want to be a better person. I didn't think I was a bad person. I didn't want to make any friends. I didn't care about anything. I wanted to stop losing all of my flipping money. That's all I cared about, period. But then what happens is that you hear people's stories and you listen instead of talking all the time, which is all I ever did. And you get better. It's kind of like osmosis. I mean, you get better even if you don't want to. You become a better person. You hear different perspectives on things, different stories, and then you start to recover. And that's about, like Brian said, becoming a better person, because that's what it's all about. I think all people could use a 12-step program in their life. Everybody, because it's really has just completely changed my life in all aspects. So, and I actually think in GA, sometimes we do a disservice by talking about the steps and about recovery and about all this other stuff when people first come in the room and they're like, yeah, this is not for me. This is ridiculous. But sorry, I like to talk, kind of like Rachel was saying, that I think she said I like to talk too, and she knows that. So, but yeah, for me, it's about a different, and for me, a better way of life. That's what recovery is for me.
Oh, I'd love to jump in. because this is a great segue to, so my name is Teresa Nora. I'm the director of recovery education and training for Friends of Recovery New York. And when I talk about recovery, I usually do a paraphrase of the SAMHSA definition of recovery, which is about improving your health and your wellness and living a self-directed life and striving to reach your full potential. And when I read that definition, I think, who doesn't want to be in recovery? I mean, really, isn't that what life is about? We're here to learn, to grow, to improve our health, our wellness, strive to reach our full potential. So it's very self-directed. So at Friends of Recovery in New York, we talk a lot about the multiple pathways to and of recovery, and whatever your pathway is that helps you improve your health and your wellness, and it's very self-directed, and you find purpose in life and meaning, we're good with.
Wow. Excellent. I'll jump in, if you will. My name's Scott. Last bet was July 12th, 2013. And gambling took away the person my wife married. It made me I call it an animal. I know a lot of people don't like the reference, but I became a person that I wasn't ever before. I wasn't a liar. I wasn't a cheater. I wasn't lazy. I was completely motivated, opened my own accounting firm at age 30, grew it to a level that I wanted it to be at. And over a period of 10 years, I destroyed everything that I was. So recovery to me is just, gambling was the easiest thing to stop because I had handcuffs on me. Becoming that person that I was a daily process, and just going back to the basics, knowing who you are, being honest with yourself, and allowing people around you to become better because you are better. And that's what recovery is to me. Thank you.
So I guess it's my turn. So I'm Wendy Birch. I'm the executive director for the National Alliance on Mental Illness for New York State. And certainly when it comes to something like gambling and mental health, it's all connected, right? Addiction, because it's all, kind of coming from the brain. And so, I think from what everybody's saying, recovery is kind of different things to different people. And it's almost never a straight line. So to me, especially when we talk about mental health, for some people, recovery is being able to get out of bed in the morning, while for others, it's getting a job. It could be, anything like that. So to me, it's really kind of talking about progress and what that means to you, and being able to set goals, even if they're just small goals, like getting out of bed. That's part of the whole recovery process.
One of the things I love about recovery is that it is so individual. Like, there can be so many people in recovery, but it's their own thing and what it means to them. And I love that you guys were willing to share what recovery is for you and what it looks like. The next question I want to ask you guys, these are a little bit directed towards Teresa and Wendy initially, because it's some of like the technical terms that people working in the field use, and talking about recovery capital and like the risk and protective factors that we talk about in prevention, and how prevention flows very nicely into recovery, and they blend together. So if you ladies would talk about that for a little bit, and then for you gentlemen, I would love for you guys to, how does that apply on an individual level? Like, what does that mean for you, to help point out that, like these things really do exist, and you can point out examples in your own life.
So I'll jump in on the definition, because I go right to the source. And so Bill White is kind of the recovery guru of the recovery movement. And you can just Google this. And I came up with the recovery capital scale, and they define recovery capital as, hang on for the definition, the volume of internal and external assets that can be brought to bear to initiate and sustain recovery from addiction, basically. So, I mean, if you think about that for a minute, it's all the things that we do to stay sober, to stay abstinent, to stay whatever, to be in recovery. Whether it's an internal asset that we're pulling out, a strength that we have internally, we try to keep the focus on our recovery story, not on the addiction story, and look at what are the things that helped us internally to draw upon our strengths, a very strengths-based approach. And then to look at all of the things that can be set up in our environment that will help us maintain, sustain, and grow in recovery, whether that's your external support system, a hobby that you develop, the people that you hang out with, the places that you go. I mean, the things that you avoid, all of those are part of your recovery capital.
Yeah, and just to add to that a little bit of what Teresa was saying is, here at NAMI especially, and I think it sounds, when in Gamblers Anonymous and things like that, peer support is just so important. So, one of the things that you're going to look for is support. So sometimes it's professional support, whether it's your therapist or some other provider. And then there's the peer support aspect, which I know we feel is so important, partially because there's so much stigma attached to mental health conditions and addiction issues. And so people aren't always willing they don't want to admit that they have a problem, and they don't want to seek any help because of the stigma and some shame that they might feel. And when you encounter a peer who says, hey, I've been through this and it's not the end of the world, and there is treatment available, I think it takes such a weight off of people. Because really, if you think about it, any kind of brain issues, just like any other disease of your body, and genetic predisposition, plays a role. And then on top of that, your environment, any trauma that you've experienced, like that's all going to contribute to it. And those are, for the most part, those are things that you really no control over. So being able to get that support and to seek treatment when you need it is really a very courageous thing to do. And so there's so many things, beyond that in terms of self-care, and really being able to identify what triggers you, I think goes a long way towards helping someone overcome and really try and follow that path of recovery.
So in plain language, Scott, Brian, and John, what things help keep you in recovery? What is your recovery capital?
The biggest internal asset that I really developed was knowing that I'm telling the truth, right? And whether or not, and I'll be specific with this because it's been an important part of my recovery, whether or not my wife believed me or not was important, but not important. And I'll explain that. If I knew I was telling the truth, at some point, she's going to believe what I said. And I asked her to verify everything that I did and everything I said from the point forward that my life came crumbling down, or I should say my life started over. So when I say something and then she asks 15 questions about it, while I try not to get defensive because I know she's just verifying, she's also trying to determine if I'm lying or not, because I became a liar. So that part of the recovery capital that I hold within myself is when I speak and I say something, I know I'm telling the truth. And that's what really makes me become a better person, because every day I don't lie, every day I become a better person. Because when I was gambling, I would lie about what I was having for lunch. And I didn't even know why, but I did. So, and by the way, as an accountant, the recovery of capital, I always say there's never enough, because we need more money to get this addiction out there and let people know that it's okay. Thank you.
I'll just second everything that Scott just said, and add to that. So my experience was that I gambled from the age of 18 to 32, and there were bouts of not gambling in there. And I was in GA at that point. I got complacent, didn't go to a few meetings, decided, oh, I'll gamble. Now I stopped gambling at 32. I was a single person. Now I'm married and I have a daughter, and those are my life factors that I didn't have when I gambled. And my gambling, you know, selfishly, I always thought, oh, I'm the only one I'm affecting. I'm the only one I'm affecting. In reality, I was affecting, you know, my sisters and my parents and my friends, and they didn't know it, but I was. And so now, you know, but I convinced myself that that was just me affecting me. It's my money. I'll lose it. It's my life. I can screw it up. I can do whatever I want. Doesn't matter. Now it matters. It matters a great deal, more than I had realized before, that I can't go back to that place that I was in before. And I'm, you know, I'd say I'm one of the lucky ones in recovery who didn't have a relationship going into recovery. You know, it's completely, it's like two separate lives. And now, you know, I have a wife and child that I am accountable to, and I've seen what it did to me. That can easily go on somebody else, and I have all the access to all the money that I had before, but it was never the amount of money or access that I had. I mean, we have a house, we have lines of credit, we have all this stuff that in my heyday of gambling I would have destroyed. And so I'm very conscious of that now, that my life is affecting somebody else's directly, and the consequences of what I do can have an effect on someone else. So I'm very conscious of that these days.
All right. Well, thank goodness Rachel's here, because I could just talk for hours. So she's gonna have to just cut me off. But man, I echo what Scott and Brian just said. Let me tell you, especially the part that Scott just said about gambling for things and gambling for money and you know, I have everything now that I was trying to get gambling. I mean, it's like nuts. I mean, it's and when I was in action, I never cared about winning or losing. I didn't care. It was like Monopoly money. I swear, I was never trying to win money. I just wanted to be in action all day, every day. I needed the high. I needed the action. It was way more exciting when I was losing, because I had to figure out where I was going to get more money, who I was going to lie to, who I was going to steal from. For me, recovery capital is all the people's stories that I hear at meetings, or when I answer the Gamblers Anonymous hotline. When I answer it, I gotta tell you, when I see the number call my phone and I know it's the hotline, I get so amped up that I get to talk to somebody and see if they're ready to come to a meeting or to get help. And not because I'm excited there's another compulsive gambler, because I know there's thousands and thousands of them. It's that the person had the courage to call the number, which I did 10 years ago, scared, crying. I mean, it's crazy. And I get so amped up, and I get so incredibly disappointed if they don't show up to the meeting, or they don't, you know, and I take that on. I've learned to get better at that, because it's not me, and it's not the person answering the phone. It's the person who wasn't ready. But for me, that's what keeps me going. People's stories that I still remember. When I went to my very first GA meeting, my sponsor ended up being my sponsor. I heard his story. It was exactly what I was doing at that second. And I thought my mom and my wife planted him in the room. I could not believe what I was listening. I'm like, this is BS. There's no way this guy is doing all these things. They just want me to stay here. They're trying to trick me to stay. I mean, it's really funny. I mean, I really thought that. And I vividly remember story after story after story, and I'll never forget them. And my job helps me too. So I've been doing STD HIV work for 21 years. I love it. It's my passion. And I was in Action 11 years ago, and we do motivational interviewing and we do behavioral counseling and we try to get folks to change behaviors. And I would get so pissed when someone would come in with STD after STD and then they wouldn't wear a condom. And I talked to them about wearing condoms and about they should be safer this way or they should be safe. And I would get pissed while I'm killing myself all day, every day, knowing that I'm killing myself, but just not wanting to make the change that I knew, at least part of me knew, that I needed to make. So thinking about all those different scenarios all the time really helps me to stay grounded and to stay in recovery and to want to stay in recovery. And I know we talk about how, the rear view mirror, you shouldn't stare at it when you're in the car because you're going to crash, but you should glance back every once in a while to remember where you were. And I think about that a lot because I do that a lot. I think it's very helpful for me to think about where I was. I don't want to forget it because if I forget it, then that might cause me some problems. But yeah, just all the experiences that I've had and the people, the awesome people that I've met is what helps me stay in recovery and grounded and is the most recovery capital for me. When I first went to GA, they started talking about God, and in the 12 steps, they mentioned God 2 or 3 times. I'm like, this is not effing for me. I am not going to church here. This is no, thank you. And they're talking about higher powers and all this other nonsense. And I'm like, this is not for me. And then I quickly realized that the higher power could be the room, which it was for me, and my fellow gamblers. So just lots of things that I think about on a daily basis, and all the people that have helped me. It's just that's the best part about Gamblers Anonymous is that we're all there to help each other all day, every day. And the more I help someone else, the more it helps me. So it's pretty cool. So, all right, I'm done for now.
Can I summarize a little?
Yes, please do.
Well, because the 4 pillars of recovery are health, home, community, and purpose. And so when I listen to the gentleman speak about their recovery capital, you've kind of hit all of those categories. Having a community of support, whatever that looks like, but also, helping someone else. That is often the purpose that we have that keeps us going, that helps us build our own recovery capital. They say in the rooms, you can't keep it unless you give it away. And I hear that a lot. Making sure that we have a home environment that's safe and welcoming. And, these are the 4 pillars to build our recovery capital on. And then the last piece that reminds me of our recovery conference that's over my head is the advocacy piece that Scott mentioned. Making sure that our legislators know that this is an illness that needs funding, that people need services and need places where they can go to build their recovery capital, whether that's a community center or a treatment program. But so we do advocacy as well as a way of building our own recovery capital and ensuring that it's available for others.
Thank you guys, all of you, for sharing. And I love that summary, Teresa, too, and how it all comes back to like those definitions. It's really real. And you guys, you shared that really well. One of the things that it brought to mind for me as we were talking about it, and even before this conversation, I was thinking about multiple pathways to recovery. And I think that's such a key point when we're talking about recovery, because we know that, maybe 10% of people with an addiction will reach out for help. Teresa, is it somewhere around there? Wendy, do you know? It's about 10%. That's really, really low. But I think it's important for people to know that going to formal treatment isn't necessarily the only way to get on the path to recovery. So you guys have alluded to, a little bit of your pathway, but if you guys want to have a conversation about it doesn't even have to be your pathway, but just pathways that exist that you've seen other people use. And I think, John, like you even described it with GA, and like, yes, GA is a pathway, but your pathway is a little bit different because your higher power is different than what some other people might think when they think of higher power too. So I would love to hear about the other pathways that you guys have heard or seen or experienced.
I'll go because I do a podcast and that's a good pathway. And so I'll talk about that real quick, which is that, you know, I gambled and I gambled to a lot of harm for a long time. And I went to GA and I went to my first GA meeting when I was 24. And I went to my second GA meeting when I was 26. So about a year and a half later. The reason was I walked into my first GA meeting and I just felt uncomfortable. There were 3 other people. Again, it's no judgment on the people in the room. It is what it is. But I walked in as a 24-year-old and there were 3 44-year-old pluses in there. And it's just not a relatable experience when you come into that, to be vulnerable and to say like, oh my God, I'm being affected by gambling and I need your help, please. Oh, we can't relate on any other level. This is going to be a problem. And so that's why I went to my second GA meeting at 26. But what I learned from my first was that I need to be accepting of those things because harm is going to come from me. And so I better get over those fears quickly that other people in the room might affect me. I need to go in and take what I can get from the program. And I did that. It was wonderful. And it was wonderful. And I ended up only relapsing after I didn't go to GA for about 4 weeks. And then I just stopped going, you know, completely. I'd given in and just said, oh, I'm fine. I'm fine. I'd become complacent in my recovery, which is a terrible, terrible thing. Because I think I've got this licked, no problem. I'm going to move on. Next thing you know, I was back in the casino gambling. And then that led to, you know, plenty of relapses, which eventually I stopped at 32. So my avenue at that point at 32 was, I don't want to go back to GA because I'm embarrassed and I'm shameful. And that's a terrible reason, but it was the reason. And I didn't want to go back because I was in a new room in a new state. I'd moved from Michigan to California. And when I was in California, I thought, what the hell can I do to get out of this? I don't know what to do, but I need to talk about it clearly because I'm talking to myself a lot. And so I started the podcast as a way to talk about my own addiction. And that worked wonderfully for me. I mean, wonderfully. I get to talk about it whenever I want. I get to ask questions of people who either work or who are like me, like Scott and John, who have the addiction and who are like wondering themselves, like, how do I get by this? Am I ever going to be okay again? And so that part has been a lovely experience for me to just talk about it with as many people as possible. And so that's what has worked for me, which is sort of, I mean, GA was wonderful, but there are those limitations. And I hope the other two will speak about this. And I hope they say positive things as well, because I love GA and what it does, but it does have these small negative aspects that I think need to be explored further and what we can do to sort of open that up to more people. But I'd love to hear other people's thoughts on that. Thank you.
John, I'm going to jump in before you get a chance. All right. Because I think what I'm going to find is I'm right between you and Brian in this case. I walked into my first GA room 3 days after getting arrested. No one told me I had to go. I needed to go. I walked into that room. There was about 30 people in that room. And I felt hope. Capital H, capital O, capital P, capital E, because I saw 30 other people in some way, shape, or form were just like me. I don't go to GA quite often, but I know I can whenever I need to. So everybody's recovery is different. Everybody's pathway to recovery is different. I love speaking about it. Being anonymous was not an option for me. I did not have any desire to be anonymous. I wanted to stand up on a stage and tell everybody about this addiction. And I wanted to. And guess what I was told by my attorney and the DA of Suffolk County? Oh, I shouldn't get legal, but I was told to shut my mouth. Okay. And I did, because I was terrified of their power. But I've spoken at local colleges. I've mentored a CEO who was in the same position I did on a weekly basis to get him through his legal process. I speak whenever I have the opportunity about this. I participate in the New York Council family group sessions every month. We just had one last night. It's just so incredibly helpful to me just to speak about it. Our family opened a small not-for-profit just for our own recovery. And we, you know, we have it there, and my kids made a video for me and it's posted. It's just, for me, that's the pathway. GA, I ran into a brother at CVS a couple of weeks ago. He said, I need you to come Tuesday night. He said, I need you to come. There's 3 people who will connect with you that just entered the room, and I need you to come. So guess what? I went because he needed me. I connected with the 3 people with there. They know my number and they can call me anytime they want. So I'll pass it off.
Yeah, this is pretty awesome. So, man, again, I completely agree with both of the gentlemen. The second I went into the GA, I told everybody, mainly because I was very proud of it, but also because I wanted to be accountable to as many people as I could be, so it wouldn't be so easy for me to just go out and gamble again. But there were plenty of people that told me, what do you tell? Don't tell anybody that. It's shameful. It's embarrassing. I got to tell you, my favorite thing to this day is when I tell someone that I'm in GA and they say, oh my God, I'm so sorry. And then I say to them, for what? It's like the greatest thing that's ever happened to me. But don't be sorry. I mean, you know, just give me a standing ovation. I mean, it's like, but that's the reaction every time. And it's kind of funny because it came up earlier. Wendy brought it up, and she brought up stigma. And you know what? The stigma starts with us. We're the ones that create the stigma. And it's just like in my HIV STD field. We create the stigma around HIV. We treat it differently than other things. And then there's a stigma around it. So we're the ones that have to fix the stigma part of it. It certainly isn't the compulsive gambler that's creating the stigma. Do I know how to do that? No. So, I mean, I'm happy to have conversations about it and try to help. And it's kind of annoying when someone says, yeah, there's this really big problem, but I got no ideas on that. So, yeah, for me, it's, I completely agree with, even with everything Brian was saying, such a critical, because it's kind of interesting, because when I went to my first GA meeting, I was 30. God, I'm telling you guys how old I am. So, I mean, I have white hair, but I'm only 48, I promise. But yeah, so I was 38, and I went in, and there were 30 people there, kind of like Scott said, but 90% of them were 60 years or older. But interestingly enough, somebody that I went to college with that was 3 years younger than me in college was in the room. And it just instantly made me feel comfortable. I'm like, oh my God, what are you doing here? And he went in when he was 25 to his first meeting. He'd already had 10, 12, 15 years clean. I'm like, oh my God. So that, interestingly enough, made me very comfortable. But I also think there are people that, and I think this is true in just life in general. I think people, I don't know, get comfortable in a little box, and they don't like to think outside the box, and they don't like change. And I think we need to do a better job at GA at adapting and welcoming newer, younger, people of color members, instead of just the typical, you know, older white guy with the leather jacket, you know, that was in Goodfellas. So, because that's not how it is anymore. But so, and it happens, right? I know some of these guys. I mean, in fact, there's some of my dearest friends who I love dearly, who helped me more than anyone could ever imagine, but they're so old school and old, you know, and just, a new member comes in and they say, okay, you got to start doing the steps now. You got to do this. You got to call your sponsor every day, 3 times a day. And it's like, no, that's not how it works. I mean, we talked about this earlier. Everyone's recovery is different. Every single person. So we have to let people recover at their own pace, whatever works for them. If they want help, they'll reach out. If they don't want help, maybe they won't. Maybe they won't reach out if they want help. But eventually, if they know that, if they become more comfortable with somebody or with some people, they will reach out. The point is, we can't be ramming things down people's throats and saying that they have to do it this way or have to do it that way, or if you're not doing the steps by this time, then that's not right. You're doing things wrong. And so all that stuff really frustrates me. It frustrates me when I wanted to go out in public about GA, like shout it from the mountaintops, get all over Facebook, get all over Twitter. What do you mean we can't promote it? We're not about self-promotion. What the hell does that mean? I barely found the number to Gamblers Anonymous. It took me weeks to Googling it and looking for it. This stuff should be accessible to everybody, just to know, family members. I mean, so that's all nonsense that we shouldn't promote it. I mean, that's complete garbage. I mean, there's so many things in our yellow book that make no sense. I mean, I'm sorry, I'm just going off on tangents, but the yellow book talks about World Series pools. I mean, seriously, if you're not over the age of 60, you've got no idea what a World Series pool is. Trust me, because I've been gambling on sports since I was 12, and I don't know what a World Series pool is. They talk about mink coats and yachts, and that's what you're gambling. Well, who's gambling for that stuff? It's just so. I just think we have to be more progressive and more open-minded and think outside the box more in general, like with everything, with all the people on this call, not just people in GA, but people that are helping people recover as well. So even professionally. So, all right, I'll stop.
I was just going to say, I just want to commend you 3 for getting out and telling your stories and talking about this, because I think that is the probably primary way to eliminate the stigma around anything, but certainly compulsive gambling for sure. I mean, being able to tell your story, I think it communicates so much to people who are struggling themselves, and then the people who have no idea what it's all about. And so, they contribute to the stigmatizing of it.
Yeah, thank you for saying that, Wendy. I was going to say some of that, but I also just want to chime in terms of the multiple pathways. There's this thing happening in the substance use addiction recovery called Recovery Community Outreach Centers that are actually funded by the state of New York, where people can go to a place to find their tribe. And so I know, like, from my own particular, recovery, it's taken me decades to find my tribe. And I started out in Al-Anon, I've been to ACOA, I've been to CODA, and recently I found a group for adoptees and addiction, and I didn't even know that was a thing. But once I went into those rooms, it was like, oh my gosh, they are telling my story. They know me, and I felt comfortable in a way that I've never felt comfortable before. And so it's going to be different for every person, where you find your tribe. And so these recovery community and outreach centers are designed to really meet the needs of the individual. And they are peer-led. So people come into these programs, and the folks that are working there, whether they're peer professionals or the administrative staff, they say, what do you need? What's your story? Where do you feel comfortable? What would help you? And so they have a myriad of programs, whether it's on the health and wellness side, where people are going for Reiki treatments or acupuncture or yoga classes. I teach a Tai Chi for recovery class, so those are pathways for people. Or whether they're very specific meetings for family members in recovery, for families of loss, for whatever your age group, your gender identity, whatever your drug of choice, your substance or behavior of choice, you can go to one of these centers and find your tribe. And your pathway. And that's going to look very different for whoever you are, because, we're all different.
I like the phrase "your tribe," Teresa. When I think of recovery, and if I I don't think anybody's ever asked this of me, but if anybody ever did ask me to sum up recovery in one word, connection is always the first thing that comes to my mind. And I think like those are the things that all of you guys have talked about, is different types of connection and finding connection in different places. So I don't know, maybe I'm going to ask you guys that same question on the spot. If you had to describe recovery in one word, what would it be? One word, John. One.
Oh, I thought Scott.
I mean, oh, go ahead, Brian. Thank you.
I'm chiming in so I can say it without anybody else taking it, which is relief. Like the amount of relief I've had off the shoulders to, I filed bankruptcy because of my gambling addiction, and that's still on me. I mean, it's a 7-year, it's still on my credit. So I'm still under it, but the amount of relief I have that I can eat something other than peanut butter and bread, and the amount of relief I have that I can pay my bills is invaluable, because there was a time when both of those were in question, and I was, do I buy cigarettes to eat up my hunger, or do I buy peanut butter to eat up my hunger? It was one of those, and it's a silly, when you think back, when I think back myself upon my own gambling, it's so incredibly silly to think that I wasn't eating because I would rather gamble. And that's how I felt every day. And so relief is the word I would use, because holy crap, is that a relief off of my shoulders.
That was unfair, Brian.
You're going to steal mine, Scott, probably.
So, I really focused on it with my definition of recovery. So I'm going to say honesty, because when I stopped gambling, I started to be honest again, because I didn't have to lie about, about everything. I went so far, I spent 24 hours manipulating bank statements so I could show my wife that we were in perfect financial health. Who does that? So, yes. So I will sum it up with honesty.
Yeah, I mean, just awesome. So it's interesting, and I'm sorry, I'm just going to go off on a little tangent, Rachel. Brian talked about money, and for me in GA, we don't talk enough about that. So when I heard my sponsor talk about how he was out of debt in 4.5 years and how he did it, that was so important to me. I can't even, because that's all I cared about. I didn't care about anything else except my debt and how much I had and how the F was I going to get out of that. So I talk about it every chance I get, because I think it's so helpful for other members to know it's possible, because it seems impossible. I had $60,000 in debt, and I did not think it was no chance. My credit was 5, whatever, 20, whatever. I don't even remember what it was. My credit now is 843. I just looked at it yesterday. I'm not saying, oh, great job, John. I'm saying it because it's possible. So, and I don't think we talk about it enough. I think we talk about all the, be a better person, this, that, and the other thing, which is very important. But when people first come in the room, that's not the most important thing. The most important thing is the money and the spouse that's upset, or the girlfriend or boyfriend or family members. This person's pissed because you owe them. How are you going to pay them? This person's pissed. Okay, so my word before recovery, or just getting into recovery, is change. I think that's the best word for me. But my word now is for sure gratitude. I mean, that's all I feel all day, every day. Every time I chair a meeting, my topic is gratitude. It's like kind of annoying probably for people, because that's the topic I choose every time. But I will never get sick of talking about gratitude, because I am so incredibly grateful. I can't even, there's no way to even put it in words. It's amazing.
Can I just add to what he said, or really just applaud what he said about the finances? Because when you get in there, it is very much we can be better people and let's deal with the soul. But hell with that, I have financial concerns, which is what is drawing me to gamble more. Because whatever the reason we gambled first, eventually we create financial concerns. And that is a big problem that needs to be dealt with right away to give us relief. And it's hard. It's really hard unless you hear people who have been through it say like, no, it gets better. It gets better. When you don't gamble, the money comes back. And that's an easy concept to hear, but to understand it is a much harder concept. And so I'm glad that John said that about the money, because it very much is a concern with people early in recovery.
Yeah, I still remember a new person coming in our room. This was just a few years ago. And they went to one of the members that had been in the room for 30 years and said, my wife's father wants to lend me the money to pay off all of my debt. So I asked him and he said, absolutely not. You can't do that. You have to pay it all off yourself, whatever. So then I, of course, thank goodness, got to talk to him and said, no. I said, if that's going to help you and your family and help you feel better, and you're going to pay it back weekly, monthly, whatever the plan is, do that. Do what's best for you and your family and your wife, not what's best for someone that thinks that, you know, you're just getting bailed out or whatever. But, and that's the thing, it's kind of like a nuance kind of a thing. And just some people don't see the different, I don't know, shades of recovery. So it's different for everybody. So I just thought of that example because I get it, right? So I get the thinking. You don't want to just get bailed out because kind of like bankruptcy. I did the same thing. 25 years ago or 20 years ago, I claimed bankruptcy. It was the greatest thing ever. Oh my God. I went bankrupt. Everyone said, oh, you never get any credit again. I was getting credit card offers a week later, lots of them. And I knew it was going to happen. It was awesome. It was like clean slate. Here we go again, baby. And it was just, but yeah, it's just, I just think sometimes we do a disservice with people and we just gotta, basically it's kind of like motivational interviewing. You gotta let the person figure out what's best for them. And then it's much more likely to work and to be sustained. And I know it's hard. It's especially for people that feel very passionately about recovery, like me and Brian and Scott, I assume. We want everyone to feel like we feel, but it just doesn't happen right away. And it doesn't happen the same way it happened for us, for everybody else. So, and my way is not always the right way as much as I might think it is for somebody else.
John, are you an executive director yet of GA?
No, yeah, no. You know what, Scott, I gotta tell you. So for my job, I've been doing STD HIV control for 21 years,
Yeah.
Public health representative, contact tracer, basically. And then when COVID hit, they asked me to be the contact tracing lead for the county. So in charge of case investigation, contact tracing, everything. So I had 70 people on my team. Without Gamblers Anonymous, are you kidding me? I wouldn't have been able to manage 2 people, let alone me. I mean, and it's all gratitude. I wouldn't be able to do any of the work I do without this program. And it's awesome because in my job, my real life job, I'm actually helping people, saving people's lives. It feels awesome. But with GA, we're all doing that too. And it's really, really cool. Most people don't have the ability to do this in a lifetime, even with one person. And we can do it with so many. It's very powerful. That's another good word.
It's really, really amazing. And Brian, I know you know this, and probably Wendy and Teresa as well. And Rachel, I know you do, is when we impact one person, we change the world. We did. And it's really, really important for me, for my recovery as well, to have that as part of it. But John, I love your passion. It's incredible.
I want to give Teresa and Wendy a minute to say their words too.
Hope. Hope. And so I love in the SUD recovery, people have reclaimed a phrase and they call themselves hope dealers now. Because you are living proof that recovery is real, that it happens, and that there are multiple pathways to get there. I loved what you said about the, coming up with the basics, make sure that people have a home, that they have a safe place to lay their head every night. And if it helps them to feel better because their financial security is taken care of, and that's what that person needs, there's no formula, there's no one size fits all. It's what each individual needs. And so each individual is going to provide different hope whoever it is that they're coaching. So I don't know if in the gambling addiction world, if you have certified peers the way that we do on the SUD side, but these are people who understand because they have lived experience with the addiction, who've been there, that are now coaching people, not in any particular pathway, but just exploring all the different options that exist and then guiding people according to what it is, like you said, John, motivational interviewing. Where is it that you are and what is it that you need and how can I help you accomplish your goals? So these folks are hope dealers.
Yeah, I think that kind of goes into my word, which is progress, right? You don't want to stagnate. You want to figure out where it is you want to be and pursue those goals. And all of that is just wrapped into, progress. So.
I love all your
have
words.
to say, I'm so sorry, Rachel.
Go ahead, John.
My very first meeting, so there's a guy in our room, he's got acronyms for everything, right? I mean, everything. Every word is an acronym. And I'm sure maybe you, Scott and Ryan, you've probably heard this. Hope is hearing other people's experiences. Every single time I hear hope, that's all I think of, because that's what helped me the most when I went to GA, was hearing other people's experiences all day, every day I think about it. And just, yeah, hope's a great word.
I love that. Hearing other people's experiences. That's great. I have another question for you guys, and it's something that we touched on briefly before we hit record. So I apologize if you're going to be repeating yourself, but there's a whole new audience here now. It's not just us. And especially considering our audience, a lot of our audience is likely to be people working in the prevention, treatment, and recovery fields. So my question is, what would you tell somebody? How would you help somebody plant seeds of hope, of relief, of all the different things that you guys were talking about that mean recovery? How would you plant seeds or share examples of seeds being planted?
Can I go? Because I told the story before, but I'm going to tell it again. So I have a friend, a very good friend, someone I love very much, who credits me every year on his anniversary of his last bet for something that I said inadvertently as a sophomore in college, 40 years ago. He was gambling on the World Series. He was betting on football games. He was doing pools in the dorm room. And I just offhandedly said to him, and I don't even remember this, but he reminds me every year, I said, do you think you might have a problem with gambling? You might want to investigate GA or something to that effect. And that seed was planted. And I think it was maybe even 10, 15 years later when he saw his life fall apart because of his gambling addiction, that he remembered that conversation from someone that he cared about back in college. And that seed sprouted. And he went to his first GA meeting, and he's over 20 years bet free today. And he has spoken at multiple conferences and then says thank you every year on his anniversary, which is just, and I don't even remember the conversation. It's so heartwarming. It's so touching, but we never know. We never know what we're going to say. It's the power of example. It's sharing our stories too, and taking a moment just to, reflect on what we see.
You get this video out to 1 million people, we're making a change. People like us who are willing to stand up and speak our minds and tell what's happening. Listen, drunken driving 30 years ago, what would they do? Take your keys, throw them into the woods, get home safe, okay? The destruction that drunken driving caused made change, right? So now it's 3 times you're out, and there's so many changes. Drug addiction, just think of the changes that went into the drug addiction and the government response to it, okay? So 10 years, change is already in progress. We need to push it forward. It's too slow. We need to get on the mountaintop, as John referenced before, and scream and scream bloody murder. Okay, this is real. Okay, as my kids put it, gambling was my kryptonite. I was their Superman. Okay, and when I tell you, I had the world in my hands. I had my own accounting practice, my own investment advisory firm. I was on the top of the world. 5 healthy children, a beautiful wife I've known since I was 15 years old. We had a moderate house. We had the world in our hands. This disease destroyed me. Took me down to my knees until it was just too late. So get out there. Let's talk about this. Let's make it. We have the resources now. Let's get more money. Get out there and start speaking.
I'll just second that for sure. And I want to add that, you know, when I was gambling, I always thought the solution was to win. I think that was my constant cycle of I'm going to lose, I'm going to get paid in a few weeks, and I'm going to come back and I'm going to win, and I'm going to get this money back, because my depression and worry and loneliness had created new challenges in my life. And somehow people need to feel that it's okay to feel the way they feel, and to tell people that they feel the way they feel. I didn't tell anybody for years. I didn't realize till probably 4 or 5 years into doing the podcast where I talked about my gambling addiction every episode, that I was lonely. I was a lonely kid, and I turned into a lonely adult, and all of that felt good with gambling. People need to know that it's okay to be lonely and it's okay to be depressed, but there are people out there for you. And this is one of those resources, and I hope people will find it. I think in this day and age of where we are with gambling accessibility, it would be wrong to not say that the industry has some culpability in this whole thing. And I think currently where we're at with the industry and the amount of accessibility that is going state to state right now, we really need to take a look at that, because I feel like in the future, we're all going to regret what we've done. But I mean, that's a conversation for a different day. This is about recovery. And so I will just tell everybody that like the others have said, it's incredibly possible to stop gambling and to get into a better way of living. And you can do it. And call you guys. If you're in New York, call New York Council, because they want to help you. Rachel wants to help you. She really wants to help you. And that's an incredible asset with the person who wants to help you, is that they want to help you. It's not just their job. She really wants to help you. So I hope people will call you guys and look out for help, and hope to listen to this. So thank you very much for including me with this.
Again, I just completely agree with Brian and Scott. It's just we got to try to get the message out there more. Kind of like Scott was saying, if this hour-long thing was on network TV and enough people saw it, there would be family members of people. There would be such a response. But some stuff like this isn't on TV or on Facebook or on Twitter. Or thank you for what you're doing, Brian. I mean, it's awesome. I mean, really awesome. And there are people in GA that would be like, what the hell is this guy doing? I mean, he's not supposed to be talking about this. Blah, blah, blah. I mean, it's just complete nonsense. I mean, it's like, we have to talk about it. We have to, and I feel like I'm kind of bashing GA a lot. I promise I'm not trying to. It's literally saved my life. But there's just lots of things, like there are a lot of people that go to GA that believe if you don't go to meetings every week, you're going to gamble no matter what. And that's not true. So people can go to GA and then leave GA and take the tools that they learned in there and not gamble. It's very possible. But they spend a lot of time in those meetings saying, no, if you don't come back, then you're going to gamble no matter what. And we don't believe you. And if you come back, we're not going to believe that you didn't gamble. And, so just, we have to be more positive about things, kind of like Brian was just saying, and let people know it's okay to feel whatever way you feel, because that's what you should do. You should feel however you feel. And because that's you. And that's how, I mean, I know it's hard, right? It's hard to, I don't know, quantify that, talk about it. let people know that for me, going to a GA meeting I still think about it to this day. When I first went to GA, I thought to myself, there's no chance that going to a silly meeting is going to help me stop gambling. That doesn't even freaking make sense. All I do is gamble all day, every day. That's all I care about. I don't care about my wife. I don't care about my family. I don't care about anything except playing poker online and betting on sports. That's all I care about. And yet, going to a meeting helped me tremendously for many, for multiple reasons, but it doesn't seem like it makes a whole lot of sense. So we have to get the message out there that it does make sense and that it does help people, and hearing other people's stories and experiences is literally, for me, the most powerful thing in the world. Like in the world is hearing people's stories about anything. But yeah, I just think that we gotta get the word out there, and you know what? Kudos to you, Rachel, because you guys want to do that all the time, and I personally just love that. So, and I don't care what the people in my room think. So, but yeah, so thank you, and thank you all. This has been awesome.
Just close out with John saying real quick. The way people gamble has changed dramatically over the last 50 years. The way we address it in GA has to change as well. It's just a fact.
For sure.
One of the things that people who are watching this during September Recovery Month, they're going to be seeing emails and social media posts from me around encouraging people to, anybody who's like working in the field of human services, to screen people for problem gambling. That's a seed that you're planting. That's starting the conversation with them. Even if they maybe do have a gambling problem, but they're not honest during the screening, you're still planting a seed there. And there will be people who are honest during the screening, and you can direct them to the Problem Gambling Resource Center to figure out what type of help is going to be best for them. But plant the seed, talk about it. Even if you're not working in the human services field, you still interact with people every day. Talk about it. If it's okay to be vulnerable and share with people. That's what hope is. It's sharing with people. I cannot remember the specific words and the acronym that John spelled out for us, but it's hearing other. Somebody's going to fill it in for me, right?
Hearing other people's experiences.
Thank you. I didn't write it down. That helps us. You've heard it from all of us today. So no matter what your role is, share experiences. Let other people share their experiences with you, because it all helps. And it all helps people get on their path to recovery. And one of the things that I think was really important about this conversation is that whether or not you have any type of addiction or not, we all need recovery. And I think that is a beautiful thing. So rather than pose another question to you guys, I will thank all of you so much for being a part of this conversation. I think there are a lot of things said today that everybody needs to hear. And I hope everybody who views this shares it with other people, because like you said, the more we talk about problem gambling, the more people that can get the help that they need and deserve, and everybody deserves to live well and get help. So thank you guys so much for being a part of this conversation today.